Saudações, galera! Começando mais um 48 Jardas, eu sou Rafa Brasileiro, tô aqui com o Eber Costa, mas eu só vou falar isso aqui de português hoje, tá? Porque em alguns minutos a gente vai ter que mudar o idioma. Hoje a gente vai falar em inglês, porque estamos recebendo nada mais, nada menos do que Blake Murphy. Vamos traduzir em português, né? Setorista do Toronto Raptors, ele trabalha na Sportsnet, então a partir de agora eu vou falar inglês para ele entender, e vocês em breve vão ter uma legendinha aqui quando a gente soltar esse programa. Quando você assistir esse programa, a legenda já vai estar no ar, tá? Então, hi Blake, welcome to 48 Minutos. Thanks so much to make some time to talk with us about the Raptors. And first of all, can you introduce yourself, talk about how long you cover the Raptors and where our followers can listen and follow you?
Yes, thank you. First of all, obrigado. My Portuguese very rough. Now that Bruno and Bebe aren't on the team, I've got no more Portuguese greetings. No more. Yeah, so I'm at Sportsnet now. I have the Raptors show with Matt Bonner every day on that channel. I do some writing as well, pop up on the TV. Before that, I was at The Athletic, Raptors Republic. If anyone's read those blogs, that was mine for a long time. I was a big part of that. Yeah, so it's, I don't know, it's like 10 or 12 seasons into it now. I've done a little bit of baseball stuff, some hockey stuff too, but Raptors for the most part. And now, yeah, ready to get going on what's going to be a very long season.
Oh, gosh. The people can find Blake on Twitter, X, in the Sportsnet, but I will recommend the BlakeMurphy.com. Because everything that Blake does, he puts there so you can read, watch him. I remember almost every Jays game he came in during the time between the innings to bring some news. I follow you. Oh my gosh, since before I arrived in Canada 5 years ago, actually, yeah.
Thank you.
I remember. I believe Eber maybe followed before me.
Yeah.
It's funny because we are getting ready for these reviews and we listen to a lot of podcasts. And I know that you're going to be my source. And you were saying to me, so I follow this guy even on Instagram. So I know he's a Jacksonville Jaguars fan.
We don't need to talk about that. That's
Okay.
no good right now. That's bad, man.
Yeah, but we talked with Blake after the opening night here in Toronto. By the way, my feeling was that I saw some empty seats. I look at okay. I thought you'll be packaged tonight, but maybe you see something different, Blake. You can tell us. But after one game, I know it's very hard to make any statement about the season. Me and Eber, we listened to you this morning, by the way. But what did from last night? Which aspect did you like it, and which ones? I know will be a lot of them you didn't like it. But
Yeah, I think there's obviously more to dislike than to like. That's a really bad game. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are a good team. I think they're going to be very good in the Eastern Conference this year. And even without Max Strus last night, they looked pretty good. But that should be a wake-up call. And Chris Boucher talked about this a little bit after the game, saying they got slapped in the face and maybe they needed that. And I think when you have a young team, you go through a training camp, everyone's feeling good. Everyone was in Barcelona together, and they were in Vegas together, and Miami together, and, they have a couple good preseason games. Everybody feels pretty good, even with the injuries. And then, it's opening night. Like, okay, you beat the Boston Celtics one of the games. The Boston Celtics are the defending champions. They do not care about a preseason game. The Cleveland Cavaliers on opening night really care about that game. They want that win. Evan Mobley is probably fired up because him and Scotty Barnes have kind of been tied together in the past. Opening night last year, Darius Garland got hurt in that game, so he was probably fired up for it. And I think it's a good wake-up call that even if you're young and you're fun and some things are going well, you have to play so hard every night in the NBA, especially if you're a bad team. If you are Ochai Agbaji, you have to be, and you're starting, you have to be playing like you could get benched tomorrow. If you're Scotty Barnes, you got to be playing like you want all NBA this year. If you're Bruno Fernando, you got to be playing like you could get cut tomorrow, and all the way down the roster. And some guys did that in the opener, but I didn't think after that first quarter, I didn't think there was enough intensity. I didn't think they were ready enough for Cleveland's defensive game plan, which, even though it's the first night of the season, Cleveland's been running pretty, even with the new head coach, Kenny Atkinson was not running anything too new defensively. So I didn't think they were really ready enough, and certainly not forceful enough. It was pretty, and it's one game, but it was pretty disappointing that, you think a young team that isn't going to win a lot of games, the one thing that they should do well every night is play really hard and make it tough for the other team. I didn't see that outside of the first quarter. That was a little disappointing, and obviously some guys had bad nights, but big picture, I would have expected them to at least make it hard for Cleveland.
Hey Blake, and finally nice talking to you. I've been following your work for I don't know how many years now, probably 8. Every season Outlook with Nate Duncan, I'm a subscriber of Nate. Last night was really rough. I saw a lot of strange stuff, like in the offense, people bumping into each other. I mean, the spacing was horrible. But I wanted to talk more on a broader perspective. I was thinking something that been bothering me for some time now. In the last 3 seasons, the Raptors have been in the bottom part of the league, both in 3-point attempts and 3-point percentage. And none of these years' draftees are shooters. So in there are 4 guys, right? Mogbo, Chomche, Walter, and Shed, whom you wrote about a very nice piece, by the way.
Thank you.
Very good piece. And of course they drafted Grady last year, but hasn't the Raptors front office been focusing a little bit too much on the physical profile or other skills in detriment of shooting in the last few years?
It's a really good question, and this goes back beyond just these couple years. When they drafted DeLon Wright, DeLon wasn't a shooter. Norman Powell, I remember I went back and looked up the draft. I worked at the Score at the time, and I wrote the draft profile on Norm, and it was he could do everything except shoot threes. He needed to be able to learn to shoot threes to make it in the NBA. OG Anunoby, if you remember, there were huge question marks about his ability as a shooter coming out of college because it was funky and he didn't shoot a lot of them at the college level. So and then obviously Pascal was not a 3-point shooter either. And I think what that tells us is they believe that you can teach shooting more than you can teach. You can't teach a guy to be 6'9" with a 7-foot wingspan. You can't teach a guy really to have a big high motor or run the floor well or be, you could teach defense a little bit, but sometimes there's, some guys either have it or they don't kind of ingrained in them. So I think what that tells us is they believe that they can teach shooting. The results over the last couple of years, not as good as the results with DeLon and Norm and OG, and even Pascal got to be a good 3-point shooter. So they were able to help some of those guys come along. But I certainly understand the question. Brady is the only one of these guys that they believe other teams are worried about beyond the 3-point line. They also lost couple years. Not as good as Gary Trent Jr. was. He's not a starting caliber player on a championship team or anything like that. But he shot a lot of threes, and he shot them at a pretty high percentage. So, that's probably the biggest concern with the offense is even if Scotty Barnes is really good and commands a double team. There was a play last night. They were trying to bust the zone, and Chris Boucher flashed to the middle. And it wasn't none of their possessions against the zone were very good. But Boucher flashes to the middle, and I think it was Scotty finds him with the pass. So you're doing the stuff you're supposed to do. You get a guy to the middle. You get the pass to him. He sucks in a second defender. But the only guy Boucher has the pass to outside is Davion Mitchell. And the Cleveland, I like Davion Mitchell, but the Cleveland defense did not move. They don't care about Davion Mitchell.
I saw that play. I saw that play. Right in the middle of the paint, and he kicked out. Yeah,
so they don't care. And so this is going to be a challenge. Jamal Shed, I like him a lot. he has never shot the three ball particularly well. Ochai doesn't shoot the three really. So it's a huge question, and honestly, it's why like it's surprising. I love the G League guys and stuff like that. When I started tweeting nice things about Jamison Battle at Summer League, I did not think he'd be playing 16 minutes in the opening night game. And part of the reason is he's the only guy on that bench really that profiles as a shooter at all. So, he's not quote unquote as good as some of these other guys, but he's the only one of those guys who really shoots the three other than maybe Chris Boucher. So I'm with you on, that being a weakness. They only attempted 4 corner threes last night. 4 the whole game. I didn't know you could do that in 2024. So they're going to have to find a way to manufacture more of that, because you could have all the nice passes in the world. You could have the good high post offense. Scotty can be really good drawing double teams in the post or attacking or whatever. But if guys don't knock down those shots and you don't take them, you're going to be playing in this much space, and it's going to make it all that much harder for quickly on the drive, Scotty in the post and things like that. So, it is by far their biggest challenge on offense.
That's exactly my follow-up question is, what do you think is the path for this Toronto offense to be at least league average? I was thinking maybe creating more transition opportunities for all these young athletic dudes. You have a backcourt with Mitchell and Shed that they steal a lot of balls. So maybe this is the way. I felt like they need to play a little bit faster, because for a team that doesn't have enough talent to play on the half court, they will need to be playing faster, and they play in a more deliberate tempo.
So I agree with you on that. Now here's the trouble with this sometimes is, so they had the most transition opportunities in the league last year. Only 17.6% of their possessions. So even if you are the best team in the league at getting out in transition, less than 1 out of every 5 possessions is going to be in transition. You still got to figure out 80 to 85% of your offense in the half court. So I agree they have to do that in transition, but that's only going to get them part of the way there. Some of this is going to be, you'll get Quickly and RJ back. That'll obviously help a little bit. Quickly shooting, RJ's ability to attack from the second side and things like that. But it does, even the starting 5, which looks like a pretty okay starting 5. Like, I think they'll play most opposing teams even, maybe even a slight positive. I'm talking about Scotty, RJ, Quickly, Grady, and Jakob as a 5-some. Even that group with Grady out there and with Emmanuel Quickly, that group probably only has average spacing, and that's your best lineup. So that's going to rely a lot on creating mismatches and attacking those instead of, using traditional spacing. We saw in the first quarter last night before things got poor, they were doing a pretty good job of, okay, Scotty got Darius Garland. He's going to go at that. Okay, who's got Dean Wade on them? You're going to go at that. And that's not how they want to play forever. They want to play more pass oriented and the beautiful game style. But right now, when they need a bucket, they're going to have to mismatch hunt a little bit like that, more than I think they would like to. And this was part of the story at the start of last season, too, when Pascal was still there. Their best offense was often, hey, let's run a pick and roll, and then Pascal's going to get a mismatch in the post. And whether it's to score or to pass to Scotty as a cutter or whatever, that was their best offense for the first 20 games of the season. I think they're probably going to be in a position like that where, RJ attacking from the second side against the seam, or Scotty getting a mismatch in the quickly pick and roll and kind of, seeing what he can do with that. You're going to have to piece it together that way, because even if you're a really good passing team like they want to be, they'll reference those Spurs teams from the 2010s that my co-host Matt Bonner played on. It's one thing to pass the ball everywhere and do all these beautiful things. That team had lots of shooters and a bunch of Hall of Famers on the team. That's why that works. It doesn't, if the 4 of us go and play basketball, it's not going to work as well if we can't shoot like that and we can't attack the paint like that. So they're going to have to piece it together offensively. And I think, maybe a little bit more than they would like. They're going to have to mismatch hunt early on here.
It's good that you mentioned Porto, because one of the problems, I mean, if in theory you can play in transition by forcing turnovers and etc., you also need to be a really good defense. And Toronto was the second worst defense in opponent field goal percentage at the rim. percolating the glass. Even last night, Mobley and Allen, they combined for what 40 points, each playing little more than 25 minutes. Do you think there'll be any improvement at all on this regard?
There better be. Yeah. So I mean, the stat you're referencing, yeah, opponents shot almost 70% at the rim last year outside of garbage time, and that just, you can't have that. And it'd be one thing if opponents weren't getting to the rim very often, but they got to the rim at like a league average rate. So that's too easy. What was it? 68 points in the paint, I think they gave up to the Cavs last night, and that's a Cavs team with two very good bigs in Mobley and Allen, but it's still it's not a good start here. So I think this part of why they've talked up point of attack defense so much, perimeter defenses, they want to be better on that so that guys like Pirtle, Bruno Fernando, if he's in there, Scotty Barnes, even as a helper off the weak side, those guys don't have to be in those positions as much to do too much, trying to erase things in the paint. Because last year, a big part of last year was just like, I don't know what those numbers were once Jakob Pertl got injured for the season and like Malik Williams was starting at center, but the field goal percentage had to be like 80% in those final 20 games or whatever. So Jakob's good there, but he's good within a pretty conservative dynamic, and you can do that better if you have better perimeter defenders like Shed and Mitchell. But it's going to be on Quickly and RJ to defend at that level too, because of the five guys you're starting, Grady's the guy you're going to want to hide. Like Grady's the guy who last night is on Dean Wade to start the game, and none of the Sixers are healthy for Friday, but he'd go on, I don't know. So you don't want him on Maxey. You don't want him on Eric Gordon. That's for sure. So we'll see who they start in that one, but Grady's the guy you're going to want to hide. So some of that's going to be on those guys individually to be better, because I think in their heads, if they're better at the point of attack, their centers don't have to bail them out as much. You think of too, like Scotty can obviously physically he's capable of guarding the other team's best player sometimes, but I think when he's his best is he's on that lower third of the floor and he can come in as a helper in passing lanes and as a help side rim protector and just kind of create chaos the same way the Budenholzer Bucks kind of used Giannis. They didn't, if you think back to the Raptors championship, and they probably should have put Giannis on Kawhi at some point, but they didn't. And why they didn't was they wanted Giannis being everywhere, causing chaos, lots of blocks and steals and help assignments and stuff like that. I think ideally that's how you use Scotty, but you can only do that if Quickly and RJ are a little better on the perimeter. So I feel bad that you asked me about how they'll be better offensively and how they'll be better defensively, and both of my answers are just kind of shrugging. But they're not going to be that good a team. So I do think that's why the emphasis is ratcheted up though on, last year they were very conservative on the ball, and then you end up with, well, you're giving up a high percentage at the rim and you're not forcing turnovers, and you're not that great a defensive rebounding team. Like they didn't really do anything well. So at least this way, if they do this, maybe you get some more steals, maybe you eat some more shot clock. It's not like there's a good rim protecting center backing up Jakob Pertl, right? Like they just don't have that guy on the roster. So they're going to have to kind of do it that way. And then some of those bench units might have to be like more vision 6-9 kind of switchy. Like last night we saw a lineup with Mobo, Boucher, and Barnes as the 3-4-5, and like no one's the center the way Jakob is the center, but you just kind of have to piece it together that way. They just don't have the personnel.
Yeah. And Boucher is I don't think he's the help defender he was in the past.
Yeah.
He doesn't protect the rim as well as he did before. So
and Darko, sorry to interrupt you. Darko in camp said basically he considers Boucher like a 3-4 at this point. Like we're not even talking like a 4-5. Like he called him a 3-4. So I think they prefer him on the perimeter, given the option.
Maybe his best defensive play yesterday was pass lane that he got the ball. He steal the ball. But yeah, let's just take a look in the ins and outs from the Raptors on this season. Pedro is moving the things here for us. And the players that arrived, David Mitchell, Bruno Fernando, Jacob Walker, Jonathan Mogbo, Ulrich Kromche, and out, Jordan, I always...
Wara,
thanks so much.
The N is silent, yeah.
Yeah. Gary Trent Jr. and Jalen McDaniels. And 2 days ago, Blake, you spoke with Darko at the Raptors center. And in your interview, he used the word process at least 3 or 4 times the
Mhm.
beginning. We are witness the Raptors process, like the Sixers had
Yeah.
for a decade and didn't get anything, but it's a truly process that we are witnessing now.
I think there's two different ways to do the process, and the Sixers was trust this for years and years and years, and we'll tank and we'll eventually get lots of picks, and we'll waste them on Jaleel Okafor and Ben Simmons, and no, but that was like a big picture process. I think what Darko is trying to instill is you can't necessarily help it if your 3-point shot drops every time. But did the offense run well? Did you turn a small advantage into a bigger advantage? Did you make the right pass? Did you shoot when you should have instead of making the next pass? I think that's kind of what he's talking about when they look at the film after a game, they're going to be looking at, not necessarily did that three go in, but was that a good three in our offense? And that is going to suck for fans to hear for 82 games because, the three's not going in or, well, they went in last night and it didn't really matter. But if the three, if they're like 6 for 30 one game, but they come out and say after, oh, those were all good threes, within the flow of our offense. That's kind of what he's getting at there. And this is, it's a little weird because like this is what he was talking about last year too, but because they had that kind of weirdness of they had Pascal and OG and Jakob, who are like win now players, while they were talking like a developmental team, it was a little there's a little bit of like friction between those two ideas. So now I think when he talks about process, he's basically trying to warn us and be realistic about this, that they're not going to win 50 games. And you can't look at the end of the season and say, well, we only won 30 games. This season was a failure. His job is to, hey, we only won 30 games, but we're moving in the right direction. And, this guy got better. This guy got better. Our offense got better versus we only won 30 games and nothing improved and this guy took a step back. So I think that's what he's trying to get at. It's it's more of like a baseball mentality than a basketball mentality where the sample's so large in baseball. But I think that's what he's trying to get at, that they want to play the right way. And right now they don't have the talent and they're not fully developed enough for that to always, result in a win. But they want to build those habits and that style of playing. So once Scotty's better, once Quickly's better, once the next draft pick is in and things like that, then they can kind of pick this thing up with a little more speed.
You talked about results there, right? What Darko expects, and I was thinking, what do you think are the best and worst case scenarios for this team? I mean, if they do well, should we expect reinforcements? Maybe they use their MLE to sign somebody, or on the other hand, if the worst case happens, is there a possibility of trading away players, or at least a mild tanking? I think maybe Bruce Brown is going to be traded anyways. But what do you think are those scenarios?
Yeah, I think, in terms of adding, I don't think so. Maybe if there's something like last year's deal for Kelly and Ochai where they get someone who they think factors in for multiple years. I think they should probably stop trading away first round picks though, at least for right now. But no, you mentioned the mid-level exception, the MLE, and that's interesting because they kept all of it, and you can use that in the new CBA. You can use that as a trade exception. So they
Yeah.
could just take on 12 million in salary, maybe closer to like 9 million when we figure in the luxury tax and stuff.
Did
But
somebody say PJ Tucker?
no, I don't think it would be a Tucker type. Maybe, but I do think that unfortunately for like an entertainment standpoint, the way they're probably going to operate at the trade deadline is like a rebuilding team does. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you could have Bruce Brown for, a couple seconds or whatever. Maybe someone calls on Boucher. Maybe even they listen on Jakob. I don't get that sense right now, but maybe they do. Who knows? But I think what they'll do is they'll use that mid-level exception and they'll use the contracts they have. And if you need to unload money, if you're a tax team or an apron team that needs to get rid of a bad salary at the deadline, and you're going to give the Raptors a couple seconds to do that, like if you think back to the Sacramento trade, right? They get 2 seconds basically to eat Davion Mitchell. And there was the Vazenkov part before they bought
Vezenkov
him
that
out too.
They
But
had
they ended
to
up
they had
getting
to
out of
buy
that
it
for
out.
$0. So
Yeah.
or like, in that Knicks Wolves trade, the Hornets picked up 3 second-round picks just to eat a salary to make the math work in that. So I think they probably operate more like that. I do think, to your point, Bruce Brown probably very available. Chris Boucher, love the guy and has meant a lot to the Raptors. I think if you're a contending team that wanted a bench big, you could get him for a pretty reasonable price. Yeah, the scenario where they add is tougher. I don't, unless it was a young player who became available for some reason. It's hard to see. Now, in terms of best and worst case scenario, the absolute worst case scenario is they like miss the play in by like half a game and end up with like the 11th pick or something like that. That's the. But no, I think you saw against Cleveland, like, if they don't want to tank because you need Scotty and RJ and Quickly and Grady Dick to be playing together. Those guys got to learn how to play together. They got to get better. They got to develop. You don't want to sit those guys down. You don't want those guys only playing like 50 games this year. But you see pretty quickly yesterday, like how bad this team could get quickly if, Quickly and RJ are down, or if Scotty were to miss time, or if Jakob were to miss time. So I think and whether this is the best case scenario or the worst case scenario probably depends on your opinion on tanking in the draft. But I think like the scenario I'm keeping a closest eye on is they're not very good at the trade deadline. And not only do they trade a couple pieces away, we start seeing guys rested or kept out with injuries so that they can try to get a higher pick. And, that's not exactly answering your question. And again, I don't like that might be the best case scenario if you really like the draft. Might be a worst case scenario if you just want to watch good basketball. But yeah, I think that's probably a scenario that they're going to have to weigh all season.
You talked about Agbaje. I was kind of surprised he was in the starting five last night, and it's funny how he wasn't anytime in his career a very good shooter, but he became a non-shooter. It's strange, and this even accentuates more the loss of Gary Trent. Would- Did you find odd that Trent signed for the minimum with the Bucks and did not return with the Raptors?
Yeah, I certainly thought it was surprising that he only got the minimum from the Bucks. And I thought if he was going to take the minimum, he would go to the Lakers because he's a clutch client, and they always get
Yeah.
like Kentavious Caldwell Pope and Malik Monk both did it too to rehab their value. I'm surprised. I don't think Gary Trent was worth 18 or 20 million, but I think he was worth more than the minimum contract just given the 3-point shooting alone. It's interesting because he's still youngish, and the Raptors obviously knew him well. And I wonder if they knew how the Bruce Brown thing would play out, if they would have kept Gary instead of picking up Bruce Brown's option, because, salary cap wise and flexibility wise, it was probably one or the other. And they seem to have decided that keeping Bruce Brown as a trade chip was more valuable than re-signing Gary Trent a little cheaper. So, I wonder if they'd have that one back. I would bet Gary Trent Jr.'s camp would have that one back because they probably, there was probably a point in time where they could have got a lot more than the minimum. But yeah, it's a weird one. And like Bruce Brown's a way better player than he got to show with the Raptors last year, but he's going to miss like at least another month here still. Like we're talking about, he's going to be getting on the floor late enough that like all you really care about is him being able to show teams that he's healthy ahead of the trade deadline. That part of the Siakam trade really hasn't gone well for them so far.
Talk about projections. Playoff, I believe is impossible. But the line for victors, at least on Vegas this year, is 29.5. Is possible to press this number, or you don't believe that?
Yeah, I think it's possible. When I did the Nate Duncan podcast that you guys referenced, I picked the over for that number. The hard part is one, they've started the season with so many injuries that their first 20 games of schedule is awful. Like they might be 5-15 after
All right.
20 games, and then that's such a big hole to dig out of. But the hardest part about picking their win total is what if they tank after the trade deadline, right? Like, what if they not even tank? What if they trade Jakob Poeltl? And I'm not saying that they're shopping him, but like, say, I don't know, Memphis calls and says, "Hey, we like Zach Edey, but he's not ready yet. We need a center. Here's a pick." they probably at least have to consider that. So, and then if you take Jakob out of this, you guys were just talking about the rim protection numbers last year, and that was with 50, 60 games of Jakob Poeltl. It gets ugly in a hurry. Scotty Barnes misses 15, 20 games. It gets ugly in a hurry. So I think if you told me all 5 of the starters were going to play 80 games, I would pick the over on 29.5. They're so thin that it falls apart pretty quickly if one guy gets injured or one guy gets traded.
And,
Can go ahead, man.
You talked about it gets really thin. So I was thinking exactly what should you keep an eye on anyone of the other newcomers besides Jamal Shad, right? And who already seemed to have fallen into the good graces of Rajakovic. He really loves effort guys. By the way, Grady Dick was extremely aggressive. I liked him since the preseason. He's in both ends. He's been really aggressive and great effort. But should we keep an eye on any of these newcomers? Walter didn't debut yet, so I like Jameson Battle that you mentioned. I was rooting for him to stay on the roster before the cut, and I like exactly because of the shooting, because Toronto simply doesn't have shooting for so many years now, and anyone should keep an eye.
Yeah, I think, Shed is the big one for me. It's why I chose to write a piece on him. Like, I think he's going to be a good NBA player. Mobo is really interesting to me long term. It's hard he doesn't, have a perfect fit in that second unit right now. Maybe he fits better when Kelly Olynyk is back, just like spacing and offense wise. But I think both of those guys are going to see a lot of time with Raptors 905 this year, which is nice for me personally because I got to watch all those games. It'll be nice to have a year that's like Fred, like when they had Fred and Pascal and Bruno. It'll be Shed and Mobo and Shamshe in those same roles. So that'll be fun. Battle's cool. I think ideally he'd be in the 905 a lot too because he's a good shooter, but the other parts of his game really have to come along. And then the other guy, I'll say we won't see him for a little bit still, but they're really high on Jacoby Walter. They think he could be like kind of a 3-level scorer for them in time. He's another guy that he's going to need some patience. And obviously he just missed all of his first training camp. He's pretty slender. So the physicality might be tough for him initially. But that's a guy that I think they think he can shoot better than he shot in college from 3. And they see some defensive upside there. Now, I just straight up haven't seen enough of him. I saw the summer league. I watched some college tape and stuff like that. But we haven't seen him yet to really make a judgment in an NBA environment. But he'll be at least the guy to watch. They're going to give him plenty of opportunities once he's healthy.
Mogbo gives me that Kenneth Farid vibe. The undersized, scrappy power forward that can do a lot on the court if you don't need shooting.
Yeah, a little bit more passing than Kenneth Faried had probably, but nobody's ever going to be as good of an undersized rebounder as Kenneth Faried, other than Charles Barkley maybe. That's the only one. But yeah, I like that. You grab a defensive rebound and you have enough of a dribble to push in transition, and you can make a pass here and there. It should be fun. I think for his long-term development, he should probably go to the 905 for at least a little bit of the season, just like guys like Pascal and Fred and Norm all did, to Boucher. All those guys benefited from some 905 time. So this is also the tough thing with injuries where nobody got to play for the 905 last year because everyone was hurt on the NBA team all the time. And I think that takes a little bit of a cost development wise.
One not really a more personal question. I was thinking it's the 30th year of the Toronto Raptors, and you probably followed the Toronto even before as a Canadian, ever since they were created. I don't know, but I was thinking, besides the championship, do you have any special moments or special teams or special players that you like the most in this 30 years?
Yeah, the Brazilians, obviously, the Portuguese speaking guys, Bruno and Bebe. No, I really did like those guys, and like the Bruno experience was a lot of fun because it was so different. But I think the big one for me is 2015, 2016 when they went to the conference finals. That was like when I was just starting my career. So I had been a fan before and I had done blogging and stuff like that. But that was when I was like, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna do Raptors Republic full time. I'm gonna try to freelance, and like this is like I'm gonna make it or not. And I got so lucky that they had such a good season that year. And it was the height of like the Kyle DeMar friendship. And it was just a really fun year. And like they go on that run, very tough series against the Pacers, the ugliest series imaginable against the Heat, just like some terrible basketball being played in that one. And then they give the Cavaliers a good push in the conference finals. And that was a cool year because it's the furthest they'd ever gone. If they didn't do that, they were probably blowing up the Kyle and DeMar duo. It was just a ton of fun, and it was important timing in my career. Beyond that, I wasn't watching from when they were first created. I didn't really get into it until like the back end of the Vince years. So I was like a hockey kid most of my life. So it was only when I stopped playing hockey I started getting into basketball. So I caught I like the Vince dunk contests and stuff like that were cool, but I only caught as a fan really like the back end of the Vince era. So my guys were like, yeah, I liked Chris Bosh a lot, but like Jose Calderon was until Kyle Lowry came along and like established himself. Jose Calderon was my favorite Raptor for a really long time. I've also gotten to meet him a couple times, which is really cool. He's like the nicest guy in the world. So yeah, Jose Calderon is probably my answer to that, other than Kyle, who's obviously the best Raptor.
Talking about the Raptors' good memories, a lot of our followers, listeners, sometimes they ask me about how to watch a game in the Scotiabank Arena. And you live in Toronto now. Give us a tip. Which bar, which place we should go before or after the game?
Yeah, it's so it depends what you're looking for because close to the arena, it's all just like chain restaurants. It's all the same thing. So if you're in the city early, like for a whole day, I could give you lots of recommendations. You could walk if the weather's nice. You can walk to Kensington Market, and there are a couple different shops and restaurants there. My favorite like dive bar in the city is called Sneaky D's. It has like the best nachos in the city, really cheap beers, but that's not really that close to the arena. So you'd have to be like down here for a whole day. If you're close to the arena though, and this is more of a post-game option, but there is a bar called Say What, like French, C apostrophe EST. What? It's about a 12 to 15 minute walk from the arena, just along Front Street, and it has a really good beer selection. You go down a set of stairs, and it's in a basement. Just a really good beer menu if you're a beer person. I'm sure they have other stuff too, but I mostly just drink beer. Yeah, if any closer than that to the stadium, it's just like chain restaurants. So nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with like a Boston pizza or a Loose Moose or whatever. But they're all the same if you're close to the arena.
Exactly.
Agree.
So we already know
Uh,
where you're going whenever Pedro gonna visit us. We're gonna meet you there. But you can go ever.
uh, we're almost going to end up here, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you being so upfront about mental health. Uh, Anyone who struggles with the mental side knows how important it is to see people are going through the same as you and being open about seeking help. And you always report on players talking about their mental health. So um, I just wanted to give recognition to that side of your reporting too. That I feel that's very important.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you appreciate it. I'm glad people appreciate it. It's a real thing, and like I know with sports, everyone expects everyone to be tough, right? And like especially physically tough. But like if you think back a couple years ago when DeMar DeRozan started talking about this stuff openly, or Kevin Love, like it was pretty unheard of now. And now, like in the NFL, there was a guy on the like mental health IR a little earlier this year. It happened in baseball this season as well. So athletes are people like even if you were a jerk, you would still want people's mental health to be good because their performance will be better. But you should also just care about the players that you see every day and the people around you, right? Like I don't know, it's important to me. It means a lot to me. I'm glad more players are speaking out about it, and I just hope the teams and the leagues continue to give guys more resources and more freedom to talk about that stuff and not, I think we're past like the stigma for like an everyday person, but it's still there a little bit when it comes to professional sports. So hopefully we could keep moving. DeMar's book is really good, by the way, and he goes into a lot of this stuff in his book.
Okay, Blake, thanks so much to make time to talk with us about the Raptors. I gonna remember someone that just got now. If you want to follow Blake, blakemurph.com. You can find him on X, Sportsnet, Instagram. I know your Instagram is more personal than professional, but yeah, if you want to talk with him, one quick question: who is the craziest guy in Toronto about sports? Who's the like homeboy? Is JD Buckins,
So what
or
do you mean craziest?
craziest? I say like the most
The bigger
emotive
fan?
fan. The
Okay.
bigger, yeah, I don't know. I won't know, or I won't say. Yeah, I would say big fan, but like for me, it's very special to listen to the guys and talk with them. And JD Dangle, the Leafs guy. If you okay, we talk about basketball, but if you follow this guy, Steve Dangle, find this guy in YouTube. You're gonna love his videos. But who is the craziest here, Blake?
Yeah, Steve Dangle's up there. He made a whole career off of just yelling into a camera, and he's so smart and business savvy and stuff. I love Steve. JD's a good pick too. JD is extremely nobody works harder and nobody watches more sports than JD.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then I mean, I still like as a basketball guy, Will Lou's reaction shows are still like top for like intensity and emotion and stuff. Maybe not this year. I don't know if he'll have that same level of intensity this year because of the expectations and stuff. But no, there are a lot of good people like that. You picked a couple good ones there, but I'll add Will in there as well. Like watching a game beside Will Lou when he's fired up is it's a fun experience. So I'll add him to the list.
Yeah, because listening to JD the next morning after a Leafs game, especially in playoffs,
Yeah.
is a totally different thing. Pedro, do you want to say something to finish here?
Okay, guys. So first of all, what you see on the screen, this is say what, I guess, right, Blake?
Yeah, looks
This
like it.
is
I
the
can't quite
place.
make it out, but yeah, it's on front screen still.
That should be the place. So if you ever have the opportunity to visit Toronto, check it out. And then Blake, what I was going to ask you pretty quick. Everyone followed the show and whatever was discussed here between you guys. So we like to talk a lot about hype here on this on this on this podcast. So we have kind of a joke here segment. It's the hype train. So having said all you have said so far about the Toronto Raptors, how hyped are you about this team? Are you getting on board or not?
I'm
Get
very
aboard the
hyped.
TTC.
Yeah, I'm very hyped about the basketball season being back and doing the Raptor show with Matt Bonner. I think I'm going to wait for the next train when it comes to the team specifically. I don't think they're going to be that good, unfortunately.
All right, Blake. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
man.
Great to meet you in chat.
Thank you, Blake.
See you.
E é isso, galera. Acabamos o programa. Você vê a gente, 48.com, e semana que vem tá de volta. Forte abraço.